Hey, y'all, I went to the doctor the other day, and when I got there, the first thing they do is they weigh you, which is the worst thing they could possibly do. And I guess I saw the numbers and I made a comment like, well, that's fantastic. And I didn't think she heard me. We went back in the room, in the exam room, and she asked you questions like, what are you doing here, or whatever. And then later she said, I'm sorry about your weight. And I said, you know what, I am too. I know what I could do about it. I could exercise or diet or do some things, but no. Apparently I'm not ready to do that. She said, no, I'm sorry you had to wait so long. I said, yeah, I knew what you meant. Don't tell me what to do. I'll tell you the kind of alcoholic I am. Here's a joke that I heard a long time ago that explains it pretty well. Man's walking along the beach and he finds a lantern and he picks it up and he rubs it and the genie pops out. Genie says, you get 3 wishes. And the man says, sweet. He said, I want a bottle of vodka that never empties. He said, no matter how many times I empty it, it fills right back up. He said, done. Poof, did it. Guy chugs a whole bunch of vodka, watches it, fills right back up. He said, man, that was amazing. Genie said, you get 2 more wishes. He said, I'll take 2 more just like it. It's exactly how I do. I failed my senior year of high school because I was very busy drinking. There was lots to do. And what happened was when I went back for my second senior year of high school, I was very busy again, and I got depressed. I know that seems hard to believe with all that drinking. And I was in school with all those people that I, had made fun of all those years, and they weren't as friendly to me as I thought they ought to be. And I got real depressed and ended up going to a psych center. Now, here's how I do things. I do things real bam, bam, bam. So what I did was I graduated from that psych center, drove to my high school graduation, and then once I did that, I went to my first treatment center, all in the same day. My parents loved it. They were super excited. Now, that first treatment center wasn't a good fit. And by not a good fit, I mean I wasn't ready. I don't know if you've been to a treatment center that wasn't a good fit. I went to 4 of them. 3 of them were terrible fits. It was the last one that did it. I'll tell you, my first 12-step call that was done on me was back in 1990. And what I did was I had a Sunday school teacher, and for some reason I decided it would be a super good idea to get a great big bottle of wine and then go to her house and just chit-chat. Well, her husband's a sheriff. Here's a tip. Don't take the crime to them. Perhaps make them work a little harder for it would be a good idea. Now, these people, Diane and Rebecca, came to get me, and they took me to Rebecca's house. And here's how I knew I was in the wrong crowd. Rebecca's dog was in heat, and they put a pair of Batman underwear on it. And I thought, these might not be the people I want to associate with. Things are bad, but I'm not sure they're that bad yet. And those people never said to me, here's what you got to do. You got to go to meetings. You got to work the steps, and this is what's going to happen. Nobody did that. All people did was just talk to me about what their day was like, and I loved it. And then that was my first taste of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, when we left there, Rebecca had to go to work the next day. So I went to Diane's house, and when we were walking up the street, I said, what house do you live in? And she said, that white one with the red roof. And I said, oh my God, I grew up in that house. So you see, all that first talk, the one that happened, that was so, here's what steps are, and here's what meetings are, and here's how it works. All that happened around a little counter that I'd had 1,000 breakfasts at. My higher power had my back before I even knew what a higher power was. And that's pretty good stuff. The first time I ever did comedy, I walked down here to a comedy club. It's not there anymore. It's called Slap Happy's. I ran that place into the ground. That's what happened. So I walked in and I said, I want to be a comedian. And they said, we need some help in the kitchen. And I said, that's close enough. So I walked in and I first reported for work, and 2 weeks later they were like, hey, if you had to be funny right now, could you do it? And I said, absolutely. I've been training for this moment my entire life, and I've never been more wrong. I think I got one laugh, and if I'm not mistaken, it was on a joke I had stolen from a professional comedian. It did not go well. The people that I was waiting on were very confused by why their server was bombing so terribly on stage. It was all very painful. I had a second chance to do comedy in 2004. And when I did that, I was working at Allstate in that corporate job, and I'd done a little bit of comedy, and there was a guy there who used to be on American Idol, but he had gotten kicked off, ironically, for drinking. And so I knew we were going to be best friends. And so he said, hey, I'm opening a comedy club downtown. Why don't you come in and be a part of it? And I said, that sounds fantastic. Why don't you do a guest set? And I said, I am in. Now, I didn't know what a guest set was. A guest set is 5 minutes. I invited everybody I knew. I invited my mama and my daddy. They didn't come, thank God. There were the vice president of the company, the managers, my coworkers, 60-some people showed up for that. And I did 25 minutes of material. 25. I bet they were losing their minds. But there wasn't a lot of service there because they weren't expecting that many people, so I was ordering drinks 2 at a time, bourbon and Sprites, 2 at a time, 2 at a time, 2 at a time. Now, my set went real great. Got a standing ovation. It was lovely. But what happened was halfway through the real comedian set, I thought of some other funny stuff. Yeah, spoiler alert, that didn't end well. He did not appreciate me being on the stage right beside him, wanting to have a joke off, because I thought I had better jokes than he did. I was mistaken. He had better jokes. But that's just a reminder of what can happen to me if I don't do what I'm supposed to do. You know, we get a daily reprieve in this thing, and I thought a reprieve was just a second chance. But it turns out a reprieve is a postponement of a death sentence, and that's pretty good stuff. When I came in here, I was broken, and my sponsor said to me, are you willing to go to any length? And I said, yes, I am. And she said, are you sure? And I said, 100%. And she said, I need you to call me every day, and I need you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I said, well, I'm willing, but I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff to do. I can remember one of my sponsors said, well, what if I go to a meeting and somebody sees my car? If somebody sees your car, honey, you were drunk and passed out in your front yard 2 days ago. I don't think people are going to drive by and do a license check at the AA meeting. I think it'll be all right. You can't save your face and your ass at the same time. There's a little FYI. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. You want to find out who is an alcoholic? Go up there to Walmart and ask 100 people if they'd rather be doomed to an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis. And 99 of them are going to go spiritual basis. And one of them is going to say, by alcoholic death, do you mean like real slow, painful, and expensive? Or are you talking more like a hold my beer, I want to try something kind of alcoholic death? Now, I'm lucky. I have a phone. It's got about 600 numbers in it. Most of them are AA. The other are, I'm not going to lie, restaurants. If you need the number to Buffalo Wild Wings, I can help you. But the ranch dressing is better at all sports. And if you don't know any better, I can't be your friend. So the thing is I could pick up that phone anytime and call somebody, and eventually somebody's going to accidentally answer it and have to talk to me. But they'll get me through. Now, there was a time when there were just a few meetings in the country. Not only, we get a lot of meetings in this valley, but just a few in the country. So your sponsor wasn't available. Sometimes you had to write a letter. A letter is when you write on a... Some of y'all are young. Some is when you write your feelings and your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations and your pain on a piece of paper, and then you find an envelope, and then you fold that letter and you put it in that envelope, and then you hunt down a stamp. And you hope you have a stamp. You never have a stamp. Never. You got to go to the post office. While you're there, mail the letter. Now, that letter didn't get there overnight. Sometimes it take a week to get there. And then your sponsor had to open it when she felt like it, read it, think about what she was going to say, and then she had to find some paper and write all the answer on it, and then fold that up and put it in an envelope and find a stamp. She doesn't have a stamp either. She's got to go to the post office. And she mails it back. It could be 2-3 weeks later. And you know, there it is. The mail comes. You know the letter's there. You walk out there. You wait. You rip it open because you know that she has the answer, what you've been waiting for. And what does it say? Did you pray? I will drive to Akron and cut you. As soon as I get the horses out the barn. When I was out there, you know, I was a drunk, clearly. But when I came in, let me try that again. Take two. I replaced my alcohol with something else. I replaced it with ice cream and sprinkles. Now, if you don't agree that this is the best kind of sprinkles, we can't be friends. Because these are crunchy and they feel good. And I don't mean just like I used a little sprinkles on my ice cream. I'm talking about we got to turn up the TV because I can't hear over your sprinkle addiction. And I told people I have a problem with sprinkles, and nobody listened. Nobody listened. And I'd get up in the morning and I'd think, today, not going to eat ice cream with sprinkles. I'm not going to do it. Today's going to be a better day. And about noon, I'd think, maybe some ice cream, but no sprinkles. 5 o'clock at night, I'm on my way to the Kroger for my ice cream and my sprinkles. That's how that worked. And when I would finish with the bottles, I would just toss them, kind of like I did my liquor bottles. I would just toss them, and I wouldn't think about what happened to them. So a friend of mine came over to help me move one time, and she moved the box, one of the boxes, and behind it, y'all, were 28 bottles of empty sprinkles. She said, "You got a problem with sprinkles?" I said, "I've been trying to tell you that for 6 months and 52 pounds, but you can't listen to me." Schedules change, y'all. Schedules change a lot. And you ever been to a meeting a lot and you get there on a regular basis and then for some reason you don't show up for a month or two? God forbid you walk in there. God forbid, first, people are sure you're back out. Secondly, don't pop a breath mint before you go in there. And when they're handing out the chips, don't move a muscle. We got a white chip here, just a desire to stop drink. We'll come back to it. That's the worst, y'all. That's the worst. We were talking about resentments in a meeting the other day, and the best story I ever heard about resentments was this man. He was talking about laying in bed with his wife, and he put his leg over on her side of the bed, and she said, "Oh my God, you sleep like Tony Parks." He was like, "Who is Tony Parks? I will find him." And he thought, no, just calm down. She reads a lot of books. Maybe Tony Parks is a character in a book. Maybe so I'm just going to ask. Because, you know, if you don't ask, the next thing you know, it's 2 weeks later. And she says, "Hey, can you move those boots?" And how about Tony Parks moves them boots? How about that? That's how that happens. He said, "Honey, who's Tony Parks?" She said, "Tony Parks? What do you mean?" He said, "Yeah, you just said I sleep like Tony Parks." She said, "You are an idiot." She said, Tony, the guy next door, he parks so you can't get your car in or out. I have a problem with balance, y'all. I have a real problem with balance. Balance is that point I pass on the way from one extreme to another. I don't know if anybody else has that problem. I also have a problem with coffee. Now, I'll tell you what happened. I have a friend in these rooms who makes coffee. I don't know what she puts in it, but I had one cup. I promise you, I had one cup. And my sponsor came over later that afternoon, and I had the label maker out. I was labeling everything I own. I was making lists. I was organizing, and she was like, what's wrong? I said, me and Cynthia had a cup of coffee. It was just fantastic. I don't know what she puts in it. I got to find out. My best friend's like, what's the recipe? What kind of coffee is it? I had labeled everything. Y'all, I don't know if you can see this microphone. It's a real problem. It's a real problem. I was nervous about doing this, and my friend said, my sponsor said, you know what you ought to do, Melissa, is think about the 11th step. Just, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, bring only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Only? Praying only? I don't think I can do that. Because you know what happens when you pray only for something? Oftentimes you get it. And I don't want it all the time. Sometimes it's like I'm a pitcher and God's a catcher, and I pray for it, and then He gives me a sign, and I shake Him off. What else you got? What else you got? Now, I went to Mount Regis in 2007, but and I'm fixing to show y'all my intake photo. I thought that when I blew a .37, it would be hysterical. It's not as funny as I had hoped it would be. This is the saddest person I've ever seen. This is what waits for me. The woman I was drank, and the woman I was will drink again. This is what's waiting for me if I go back out. If I pick up one drink, the first drink has the last say. And I keep this picture as a reminder. Now, I got to work at Mount Regis for a while in 2000 and, well, it's been a couple years. I don't know what year it was. But one of my favorite, first I'll tell you this. After this picture here, 10 minutes after this, I met a guy named Sylvester, a mountain of a man. Makes anybody in here look like a little baby. He was huge. He looked like he'd just been eating people for lunch all his life. Knees and fingers, just like he'd been just hitting people all the time. And I thought, but he's new. So what do? You say hello to people who are new. That's what you do. So I went up to him and I said, hello. How's it going? He said, great. I said, what's your name? He said, my name is Sylvester, but you can call me Sly. And I said, okay, Melissa, you just have to remember Sylvester, but you can call him Sly. And I said, hi, molester. I thought I've gotten sober to die right here. Right here. So when I worked at Mount Regis, this girl came through. She was drunk as a skunk, and I said, you been drinking? She said, yeah. I said, where? She said, on the train. I said, how much? She said, the whole way. Well, you go, girl, you go. I want to tell y'all a quick story. Well, I'll try to keep it quick. When I came into these rooms, I did a lot of things wrong. I got into a relationship right away, which I don't recommend. I didn't go to as many meetings as I should have gone to. I got a sponsor, but I didn't talk to her. All the things you're not supposed to do. It was only my higher power that kept me sober as long as I've been sober. So I worked the first 8 steps perfectly 5 times. Because I would rather do 4 and 5 times than do step 9 once. as far as I was concerned, step 8 said, made a list of all persons we had harmed, became willing to make amends to them all, and got a new sponsor. Because that's exactly what I did. Every time I got to step 8, I fired whoever I was with and got me a new sponsor. Well, finally one day I found a sponsor and we worked all 8 steps and we went to 9. Now, I'll tell you this. When I was living in hotels in Atlanta, I'd put everything that I owned into a storage facility here in Roanoke. Now, I don't know if you know this, but if you don't pay that bill, they will sell every ounce of it, or they'll throw it out. As rightfully they should. You ought to be paying your bills. Well, I didn't pay the bills. The things that were in there I didn't mind losing were the furniture or whatever, but I had all my high school annuals in there. My dad wrote me a letter every day that I was in treatment. My first treatment center, he wrote me a letter every day I was in there, and all those letters were in there, notes from my mother, all kinds of stuff. It was just all gone. I was devastated. And I tell you that to tell you this. Years later, I'm riding around with a friend of mine, and we're looking at houses. Not to buy them, but just kind of daydreaming. And I was looking at little ranch houses, and she was looking at bigger houses for her and her daughter. And we were just kind of daydreaming, just kind of throwing it out there in the universe. And one of my amends was to call my grandmother every week. Now I had to amend because she didn't want to hear from me that often. Turns out when you don't hear from somebody for all those years, it concerns them when they start calling you every week, which I get. So the first Sunday came along and I picked up the phone and I called her. She didn't answer and I thought, off the hook. So I didn't call her till the next Sunday. I call her. We talked for maybe 10 minutes and that's it. What are you doing? Nothing, not much. What are you planning on doing? Well, I'm living with some friends. I'm working on getting an apartment. Hope to be moving out of here soon. Great. How are you? Great. Everything was fine. Hung up and that was the end of it. The next day, I get a phone call from my dad that said, hey, I don't know what you did to become your grandmother's favorite, and I'll clean that up for y'all. Wasn't that nice? He said, but your grandmother wants to buy a house, she wants to rent it to you, and when she dies, she wants you to have it. Now, I don't know how you get from that to an offer like that, but it was a gift. So I had to get some sponsorship. Am I allowed to have this? Am I allowed to accept this kind of thing? So I'm making this a long story very, very short. So after I moved back to town, I kept all these pieces of my life. Like somebody gave me a coffee table, but it had a knob that was off of it. And I had this music box that for 2 people, but one had lost a head in a terrible accident. And one had lost an arm. It was all very sad, but I kept all the pieces. There was a lamp that was broken, and I kept those pieces. And after months of looking, we were able to find a house that's just like a little ranch, just big enough for me. And I was sitting in that living room on the day that I moved in with a thing of super glue and all those broken pieces. And it reminded me of a quote years ago that I'd heard that said, God can take the events of the past and weave them so skillfully into a new plan that not only does it seem there's a future after all, it's as if there's been no wasted years. Sitting in that living room, it was like there'd been no wasted years. Like everything that had happened to me had happened to get me right there. And it was my first spiritual experience. It was powerful stuff. And because of that, I've learned that justice is getting what I deserve. Mercy is not getting what I deserve. And grace is getting what I don't deserve. And you people, and here tonight, have given me a night and a life full of grace. And for that, I am forever grateful. I'm going to tell you about this picture. This picture here, my grandfather painted 50 years ago. But it's chipping. I don't know if you can see these chips. What happened was he painted, it was a summer scene, and it was all green and grassy and beautiful. But he hated it. So he painted, he's like, nope, done, painting over it. And you can see where he painted over the leaves and whatnot here. And what's happened is this is chipping, but it doesn't chip to the canvas. It only chips down to the green underneath. That's Alcoholics Anonymous for me. For me, I came in so worried about what I was going to become, and I just became a better, brighter version of what I was always supposed to be. And I hope that you all can find that too.